Actually, incidentally, I saw Manufan in chat talking smack on Clark Kent.
Oh no! You wanna? How about this? Let's start off with Clark Kent then.
Yeah. Let's start out with Clark Kent.
Turn the rules up.
Now, we made this really fantastic card, and big thanks, shout out to Rum Ham and some friends that helped us put this together.
Yeah, shout out to all the admins, Mark, Lucas, Will, Handsome Korean, Sly, all the people who go into making the Super Magical Cup who maybe aren't on camera every week.
We asked these players a ton of really interesting questions, and here we featured one of the ones that we thought was particularly interesting. Who was the most challenging opponent you faced on your way to the Invitational? And Clark Kent said that it was a tough question. He faced a lot of quality opponents, so he respects his competition, and he actually says that Mats was during the first Super Magical Cup when mortars were everywhere. The thing that interested me the most, and I think
we're looking at the same thing.
And I think,
they play.
Yeah,
they play, and they're in the same group.
And not only do they have to play in the same group, but what is very, very interesting to me is we asked them a bunch more questions than just this one. And when I went over and looked over it, Clark Kent says that Mats is this player that he's watching out for. The competition that he respects is Elite Gaming, Pompeyo, Interlol. But there's somebody who's not mentioned.
Who's that?
Woody is not mentioned in these players that he's watching out for.
Do you think he's throwing shake? Because here's the thing, Clark Kent's number 2 on the leaderboard. The only person ahead of him on the leaderboard is the mortar mauler, Woody himself.
And the most interesting thing to me is that he's afraid of Mats because of his mortar usage. Why aren't you afraid of Woody because of his mortar usage?
That might be mind games.
I honestly don't know.
Because of the nature of the seeded tournaments, Clark Kent and Woody couldn't encounter each other until the finals.
Yeah.
Or not the finals, but until the top 8, top 4 rounds, depending on how the seeding goes.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited because we will see hopefully some Clark Kent versus mortar. Clark Kent, of course, reigning from the deep south, Louisiana, USA, the pride of Baton Rouge or New Orleans or wherever. He just said Louisiana. But we do know he went to Louisiana State, by the way, so the pride of Baton Rouge, LSU.
That's true.
LSU Tiger in there.
That's true. Clark Kent, very interesting player. I really like watching his play. The first time that I saw him play, I just thought to myself that he just had such great strategy and decision making all throughout his game, and he was always able to take a look at a situation and figure out how he was going to get himself out of this troublesome scenario by placing his units. I mean, I think he epitomizes not necessarily what cards you have, but how you use them. And I think there is a certain degree of push and pull in Clash Royale. It's important to have the right deck, it's important to have the right cards, but how you employ those cards is incredibly important. Clark Kent strikes me as a player that has that on the top of his mind at all points in the game.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the game's premier maybe deck builders is like kind of a weird to say, but he's one of the people who has helped popularize many new archetypes in the tournament meta. I believe Clark Kent was the first person to take a triple legendary deck into the top 4 of a Super Magical Cup. Back, actually it was the week after his clanmate Manufan took the minor Mini P.E.K.K.A. Minion Horde deck all the way to his first Super Magical Cup win. The very next week, Clark Kent, I believe, took down the whole tournament with a triple legendary deck.
Yeah. And as we can see, that's why we have provided him with the Princess and the Miner as 2 of his key cards.
Gotta watch out.
And he's won SMC number 5, and he has 5 top 4 finishes. I think that just about sums up Clark Kent as a strong player. You cannot argue with 5 top 4s.
Only 2 players, Woody and Clark Kent, have never lost in the top 8 rounds. So if they make the top 8, they have every single time made the top 4, the cash rounds. That tells me that both Woody and Clark Kent are very clutch players. When the pressure's on, when it's, one match for money or nothing, Clark Kent takes the money.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, there's so many interesting stories to tell, but let's move on to the next player. Let's see who else we have to talk about. Let's throw up. Now, this is an interesting player to me, Malcaide. Malcaide was just barely, I believe he was the last person to make it. He is the 16th of the
He
top
was the
16.
original 16th seed on the leaderboard. We had 2 people who were not able to make it today, so we invited the 17th and 18th seed to make the 16-person field. But yeah, Malcaide was the original 16th leaderboard seed, and he has 3 top 8s to his credit, including a top 4 appearance.
Yeah.
So in order to even make this invitational, you had to earn multiple top 8 showings.
Yeah, Yeah, and what's super interesting to me is his performance outside of the Super Magical Cup is fairly, it's fairly robust. Yeah, three PGL wins, which I believe is kind of a ladder system.
Yes.
Of a tournament.
Those are PGL weekly tournaments too. So he participates in weekly tournaments, has won 3 separate weekly events.
Mm-hmm. And then he got third at the ESL Open, which obviously was this huge tournament, and getting third in that is no easy task.
Yeah.
Malcaide as a player, super interesting to me, and also incredibly interesting that he's all the way from Bulgaria.
So if I had to guess, I think that's 10 or 11 hours ahead of us here in Los Angeles, California. So it's late at night for Malcaide, but I appreciate him staying up late on a Saturday night to try to take home the title of world champion. Malcaide's going to have a tough battle to get there, though, because he's in the group of death, the one we talked about with Justin, Interlol, and Pompeyo.
And in many ways, I would argue that he is the one player that is on the receiving end of the death that is coming. We'll see what happens.
Now, part of the reason why we wanted to feature Malcaide, though, is that because Malcaide actually hasn't entered a lot of Super Magical Cups. I believe he's only entered 3, 4, maybe 5, and has done pretty well in the few performances he's had. So I could really expect a huge upset out of Malcaide here. If Malcaide advances out of the group over any of those other 3, I think that would be one of the biggest stories in the tournament, because some huge name in the community is going to have to be left behind.
It would be definitely a gigantic story, but I'm going to go ahead and say that it's not going to happen, because that means it's just insane to me to think that Pompeyo or Interlol won't make it. I just can't imagine a world where that would happen.
I can't imagine where Justin doesn't make it, and neither of us can imagine where Pompeyo doesn't make it, and what happens if Pompeyo doesn't, right? I love that I think Malcaide being from Bulgaria, and you're going to see we have a lot of international competitors in today's event, really shows how the Super Magical Cup has grown from this small little niche tournament into the premier international Clash Royale
competition
tournament. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. What I also really like about Malcaide, one of the reasons we're going to feature him, is that I believe Malcaide runs very aggressive decks. Like in a world where there's a lot of control players, a lot of siege players, especially. Malcaide is keeping it real with Royal Giants and Hog Riders. I went back and watched all of his old top 8 performances. Malcaide loves just taking down towers on your side of the board.
And the interesting thing is, looking at how the meta was for the last few weeks of Clash Royale, this has kind of been the bread and butter deck. The Royal Giant style decks, the Hog style decks, these kind of beat down oriented aggressive decks were kind of the baseline play for Clash Royale. Let's take a look at some of the questions that we asked Malcaide. We said, who are the players you pay attention to? Who are you watching out for? And he says Interlol won the last tournament without losing a game, so I'm looking forward to face him and see what I can do. Of course, everybody has to watch out for the most recent tournament winner, and Interlol, as we'll talk about when we mention him, is very, very scary, and I'll mention why when we get
incredible
to
micro player, like one of the best. I think there's levels of players who are good deck builders, good like twitchy mechanical players, and I think Interlol is definitely on the far end of twitchy mechanical play, incredibly strong. What I really like about Malcaide too is the pride of Bulgaria, the first player in Clash Royale history to hit 2,000 and then 3,000 trophies in Bulgaria, and sitting at 38-22 might be the first player to hit 4,000 in Bulgaria.
Yeah, all right. We asked them what his pregame warm-up is. He says, the more games I play before a tournament, the better my warm-up is. It's crucial whenever I change something in my deck. And it was interesting to me because I believe Clark Kent is the one, when he answered this question, he actually said he doesn't like to play games before a tournament. He doesn't like to put himself on tilt. He just likes to make sure he's in the right mindset and is calm and goes into the tournament feeling very relaxed and easy. Malcaide strikes me as somebody who really wants to make sure he's very prepared, very warm, very ready to go.
I do that. I definitely have to just shut down for 10 minutes and kind of zone in. One question we asked Malcaide was, who is the most challenging opponent you faced on the way to the Invitational? And he said, unlike the seeds, 1, 2, 3, 4, the real high seeds, he said number 12 seed, XYX, CXYZ. He won 2-1 to leave him out of the top 4 of the last Super Magical Cup that he fought, and he's thought long and hard about what he could have done differently in that match. It'll be interesting because Malcaide would not play XYX unless they both advance out of their groups, but we might have a rematch of those two later in the round.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next player that we have. I think you guys will be very interested to see.
We've been talking about him already. We can't keep him out of our mouths.
Yep, there we have it. Pompeyo 4, and I believe that is his. I don't know if he's the leader of that clan.
I'm not sure if it's the leader of the clan, but definitely gave a shout out to Hispanos Unidos as a great clan, great community. If you actually look, they're one of the top 50 or 100 clans in the world, so they're certainly not, like a personal funsy
they
clan.
Grew Pompeyo, right?
Yeah, so. And Pompeyo is actually really interesting to us. Didn't want to do a face reveal. Understandable, 16-year-old kid from Mexico might be the prodigy in this game.
Yeah.
Pompeyo is the first level 6 player to ever hit Legendary Arena. You can see
Yeah.
that on YouTube. It's one of the most popular Clash Royale YouTube videos
Yeah.
we've seen.
Yeah.
And is currently, I believe at one point, actually, it's level 10 now in the real game, but at one point was almost 4,000 trophies as a level 9.
Yeah, and
It's like 3950 or something.
I remember I just remember him making comments about his journey and how much he had to grind and how unique he had to approach the game. And I feel like that consideration has formed him, has shaped him into this very, very precision player where his decisions are so crisp. He's seen situations so many times over and over and over again that it's just been ingrained in him how he will win out a situation, which was very evident in the last Super Magical Cup that we watched. Right, he was kind of this player who I know how to run my Lava Hound deck, and I know how to run this Hog Freeze deck. Two very, very different decks.
Yeah, and what's crazy to me is that Pompeyo he's only entered one Super Magical Cup, the 9th one, the last one of the season. And we were actually watching his matches in group play in the top 16. We said, if you're going to make the cut, you have to at least, in top 4 is not going to be good enough. You're going to have to make the finals. So what does Pompeyo do? Make the finals, right? Like, all right, okay, I guess I'll see you next week then. What's awesome is we've talked about how a lot of our tournament competitors have performed well in past tournaments. Pompeyo is a name very well known to the community. PhoneCats is one of the largest streamers. Pompeyo has won 17 PhoneCats tournaments. 17 of them. He's won more tournaments than he's lived years on this earth. And here he is.
That's too many tournaments to
That's
win.
too many.
That's too
Go
many.
to school.
So the interesting thing is, will he be able to win even one Super Magical Cup tournament? Is this tournament
That's
his
a good
time
point.
to win?
That's a
He's
good
won
point.
17 PhoneCats tournaments, but does PhoneCats tournaments have Clark Kent, Woody, Raintown, Manufan?
I do know
Jeff,
that
Justin.
every time I watch another tournament, I see in their top 8 several Super Magical Cup regulars. In fact, last week after Super Magical Cup 9, Raintown got eliminated in the first round by Interlol, went on to go top 8 a tournament later in the day, the Monster D Face Vegas tournament. Let's go do that, right?
Yeah.
So, and then also that tournament was won by Justin, who
Yeah.
we can talk about later. So
Yeah.
you can see that the Super Magical Cup players are not just limited to the Super Magical Cup. They go and perform highly at every single other tournament in the community, which is why I'm so excited for today's Invitational. We are going to crown number 1, the pride of Mexico, Pompeyo 4. And
Absolutely.
one last thing, I don't want to leave Pompeyo hanging. Not only is Pompeyo a really good mechanical player, but I really, really like his deck building and how he can innovate and spread his decks throughout the community. Pompeyo has a Lava Hound deck that has become sort of the definitive Lava Hound list that you see.
He's defined it.
And he has a control hog freeze deck. You can look it up at last week's Super Magical Cup. It was his alternate deck in that tournament. Very different from a lot of the hog cycle decks out there. A much more combo control style deck, and it was very powerful.
Second place with the freeze that was nerfed.
You're right. Yeah,
Absolutely
exactly.
terribly.
And
Nobody is using it.
Tournament freeze was always worse than top of the leaderboard freeze, and they nerf it, and he still wins. That should have been the story of last week's tournament, because Interlol won with a level 3 balloon.
Yeah.
And Pompeyo got second with a really weak freeze. You know, that's incredible.
Yeah. Incredible. Let's move on to our next player, Pompeyo. Fantastic player. And
We would be remiss if we didn't mention the number 1 seed,
Oh,
the
there he
Mortar
is.
Mauler
Look at him.
himself.
Look how happy he is with. He's sitting there right now. This picture.
That's where
was
he's playing.
taken-
He's playing
this-
out in the yard.
This picture was probably taken while his mortar was defeating an opponent. He was like, "Let me take a
He's
picture."
just, like the mortar's firing the last shot. Just looks right at the camera. So Woody is the most consistent Super Magical Cup competitor. He's played almost every single week.
Yeah.
And what's crazy to me is that he's played Mortar every single week. At least one of the 2 decks, and usually both decks has been Mortar. And despite being known as a Mortar player, despite, telegraphing his moves every week, he has more top 4 appearances than anyone else with 6. 2/3 of the Super Magical Cups we've ever had, you can see Woody in the top 4.
And I think the big thing to note about Woody is, of course, based on those cards that we have assigned him, not only is he a fantastic mortar player, he's probably one of the best princess players. And I think there might only be one other person that we could even argue kind of rivals his princess play. But the combination of the princess and the mortar, the princess being his kind of mobile mortar, right, is really what makes this double threat kind of. He still made this mortar relevant, even despite the fact that it's been nerfed a lot, and that's just the way he backs it up and the way he plays around it.
And one of the secret storylines of this event is that, last Tuesday, 5-6 days ago, Mortar got buffed.
Yeah.
Woody's been top 4ing with a nerfed Mortar. What will happen now that he has a buff. Like, he's one of the few players in this tournament to really experience a huge benefit to their main archetype, right? Like, Royal Giant didn't get buffed, Hog Rider got nerfed. Like, unless you were playing P.E.K.K.A. princes and witches and stuff, you didn't really get a major buff from this last event, but Woody really did.
Yeah.
What's crazy to me, let's actually pull up some of Woody's responses and see what he said. But what was crazy to me was that a lot of players were naming Clark Kent as the person they were afraid of, but I don't think a single player who responded said, I'm scared of Woody, which is weird because I'm terrified of Woody.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
what do you think of the deal? Do you think people are underrating him? Somehow underrating the number 1 seed?
So the very interesting thing is when I look through the answers, Woody was mentioned once or twice, and
Okay.
kind of people did give him props, but whenever they mentioned like who was the most challenging player to you, nobody really mentioned Woody, despite the fact that he is such a winning player. 6 top 4s in the SMC, and he won the first one, and he has 3 RCS wins.
Yeah, he's won every single Reddit clan system tournament that they've run. They've run 3. He's won all of them. What's crazy is that we'll show the clans comparison a little later. Reddit clans are strong, high quality competition. There's been a lot of talk about elite gaming, but the Reddit clans are no joke. They have a similar number of representatives in this week's tournament. So to win every Reddit clan system tournament is like, you're beating
crazy.
other Super Magical Cup players there too.
And between him, the first seed Woody and the second seed Clark Kent, many people named Clark Kent as a player that they were watching out for. Much fewer named Woody, and I wonder if that's just because Woody plays such a stylized deck, whereas Clark Kent is a much more general. It feels like you can nail him down in terms of his play style, other than the fact that he makes great decisions.
I'm actually worried about Woody in this tournament because, for the most part, you might know Woody plays Mortar, but you got to pick your deck for a 128-person tournament. In this event, we have the brackets of 4, and people knew the brackets beforehand, right? The tournament competitors knew. Let's take a look. So Woody is actually in a bracket here with Raintown and Naders and Clyde. I wonder if Raintown, Naders, and Clyde, seeing Woody in their bracket and knowing he's playing Mortar, adjusted their decks at all. And maybe that's why they're not afraid of him. If you go in knowing you're going to play a Mortar deck, I think it's a little easier to prepare for, and that's something that I think actually works against the number 1 seed in this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. So Woody, can he do it? I mean, he's been trying. He's the oldest competitor in Super Magical Cup, trying ever since the first one. There's been 10 Super Magical Cup tournaments. Well, 9, and then
this is the 10th.
This is the 10th, and he didn't participate in all of them. I think he's done
7 of 9.
7 of them. 7 of them.
So most.
Every single Super Magical Cup he participated in, he at least.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's unreal to me. You know what's funny too is we'll see how he does in this event. It's a lot of stress. We asked him, "What's your pregame plan? What do you do?" And he says, "I eat a bowl of Lucky Charms before every match." And sometimes I get sick during longer tournaments. I can only imagine what sort of Lucky Charm stress he must be under before the biggest tournament of Clash Royale's history.
Maybe that's why he won the first one when we had less competitors. He didn't have as many Lucky Charms.
That's it. You always lose in the top 4 because around your 7th bowl of Lucky Charms starts to get a little sick.
To vomit the marshmallows back up.
Man.
Let's move on to the next player. I mean, we've done Woody, we've done Malcaide, we've done Pompeyo.
Let's talk about another Elite Gaming member.
Naders.
Actually,
he told us it was Nader, right?
It's Naders. No, it is Naders. It's not
Nader
Nader dollar sign. It's Naders. It's an S. It's a really radical S.
Hailing from Washington, USA. I was just there before.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you see him? Did you go visit Naders?
Yeah, I wish I did.
Grab a drink?
I lived there for 6 years. Minor, Princess. Just a very solid minor player, as with many Elite Gaming members are. They love their minor over there, and for very, very good reason. Naders
Elite Gaming I would say that is the center point, the apex of the whole minor archetype. I feel like, obviously everyone tried minor when it came out, but I really feel like Elite Gaming is responsible for taking the minor archetype, developing it, refining it, running with it, and winning with it in tournaments. Like, if they hadn't won past Super Magical Cups, who knows if that archetype would be as popular as it is right now on the ladder.
Yeah. Naders is an interesting person to me because in his responses, it was very, very clear to me that he has very high respect for his competition. And he really, really, in particular, respects his fellow members at Elite Gaming. He really sees them as this highest level of competition, but I think that kind of shows in his results when it comes time for him to throw down and when it comes time for him to put up or get second place.
Yeah.
He always falls a bit short and takes second place. Now, that's not, it's not easy to get there.
Of course.
Right? but he's not been able to have that tournament victory. Kind of similar to Malcaide, he's just not been able to have that breakout victory. He's come so close.
That said, preparation is so much in events like this that having the team of other elite gaming people to prepare with is probably an advantage that not every other competitor in the Invitational has going for him. So perhaps this is his time to shine. What I really like about the story of elite gaming and Naders is that he said, I'm afraid of the other elite gaming people. Well, guess what? You're in a group with one. Raintown and Naders finished in the 8th and 9th seed, and the way the seeding works, they both ended up in the same group. So only 2 people can advance from that group. Now, I'm sure they hate to play each other, but at the same time, the best situation for elite gaming would be for Naders and Raintown to advance out of their group. If Woody or Clyde advances instead of one of them, in some way or another, they kind of knocked each other out.
Yeah, and how do you imagine a world where the number 1 seed does not advance? One of them's probably gonna go. One of them's probably going to go.
Maybe they're colluding a little bit in their elite gaming group. They're like, we got to beat Woody so we can both make it.
Oh, no.
Well, let's not count out Clyde. Yeah. Clyde is actually a student of Pompeyo, a Lava Hound player, so I can definitely see that if you build your deck to beat Mortar, you could lose to Lava Hound.
Interesting. One of the responses that stuck out to me the most when Pompeyo was answering the questions was we asked him what deck was challenging for him to play against. Guess what he said?
What'd he say? Lava Hound?
He said Lava Hound.
Ooh.
He said Lava Hound mirrors were something that he had a lot of problems with. And I feel like that was the reason why when we saw him face Overlord in the last tournament, he just seemed to have very great responses. I think he was so scared of it that he made sure he knew how to play against it to the T. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, I don't think Overlord was able to get anything going with his Lava Hound deck. Not any point of damage, or at least very insignificant amounts of damage with his own Lava Hound.
Yeah, you could tell who was the Lava Hound master, I guess, in that matchup. Yeah. I think we got about one more good person to highlight. And actually, Elite Gaming, we've talked about them a lot. It's not for no reason. They've put a lot of players in the tournament, but they're not the only clan to put a lot of people in this tournament. So let's talk about XYX, the co-leader of Reddit Troopers. Woody is the co-leader of Reddit Alpha. So Woody and XYX have led their clans and actually brought them to pretty good representation here at the tournament. Elite Gaming has 4 people, definitely in the higher end, the top seeds. But Reddit, two of the main Reddit clans, has also brought 4 competitors. Do you think either of these clans has a distinct advantage, or do you think that either one is going to really show off their prowess in this event?
My personal bias is with Elite Gaming, and that's just for Clark Kent and to a degree Scrazzer, because I feel like those 2 players are just
a level above, maybe.
The way they win, it's the way that they win.
Sure.
When I see them play and whenever they win, I feel like, man, they really knew what they were doing and they really outplayed their opponents,
Yeah.
And I don't really think they like to play hard counters, and that to me says that they're just winning because they're appraising the situation and playing their ideal cards.
You know who I think actually might be a really strong player out of the Reddit groups that we haven't talked a lot about is Ido. Ido's only participated in 2 Super Magical Cups, went top 8 and then top 4 in those 2 weeks. So Ido definitely has a strong performance. His seeding is low because there's been a lot of participation, but I could see Ido really surprising a lot of people and perhaps advancing out of the group.
What's interesting to me is just looking at these numbers. Elite Gaming is they're kind of in the pack, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of 2,
they
5,
play
8,
every
9.
week.
They're very, very strong, and they're taking up a lot of that kind of mid-range of competitors in the Super Magical Cup. Meanwhile, Reddit Alpha has 12, 13, and 15. Those are nearly I
believe those are all Reddit Troopers, I believe. XYX, Jeff, and Ido, I believe, are all in Reddit Troopers together.
Yeah, and they're kind of right at the end there,
Sure.
They're kind of getting beat up by Elite Gaming. But they have the one guy, Woody, the one guy who's just all the way over on that side at number 1.
I think both teams actually also have a good bench to practice with. So Reddit, just out at number 17 in the standings, the one who just didn't make it is Makawa, who's top 4 before. He's also in the, I believe, Reddit Troopers. Elite Gaming has Manufan, who couldn't make it today for scheduling reasons. And, of course...
who's talking trash in the chat?
He is talking trash. Yeah, he's got some trash talk to do. But also...
Easy to talk trash when you're not here.
Yeah, right? But Elite Gaming also has Jason the Giant from Helsinki, Clash with Ash, several other top players that there's a lot of practice that both these players could have.
And they have a lot of guests. How did your guest experience the Elite Gaming?
Oh, buddy, so I went over to Elite Gaming to play some games while on stream. I'm goofing around. I'm trying new decks. I've got lots of excuses. They cleaned me out. If you go to either the Super Magical Cup Twitter or my personal YouTube, which is the Rum Ham YouTube, I put up a video. It's not even the whole video. It's just like the first 5 matches. It was like Clark Kent, Man U fan, Raintown, Pompeyo, all took turns beating me up. It was like the Tupac hit 'em up video. Like, I ain't even gonna mess with you. I'm gonna send my boys in on you. And like Scrazzer like pulls my pants down and then pulled them back up and then turned me upside down, pulled them up again. Like it was nonsense. It was some of the worst things. I think I lost 11 games in a row before like Clark Kent disconnected or something and I won. Like, it was like real bad. So Elite Gaming is definitely very, very strong players, but I don't want. I'm not ready to coronate them just yet, especially because Raintown and Naders have to be in the same group and fight their way out. Clark Kent does not have a cupcake walk, and Scrazzer doesn't either. I think Scrazzer might be the dark horse of the whole tournament, but I don't think it's a cakewalk to get out of his group either.
Yeah. Actually,
Scrazzer, let's take a look. Actually, if I remember correctly, I think 3 of these 4 people are actually in the same group. They are. Let's go back to the bracket real quick, just to show that of these clan members, in Group D, we have Scrazzer, Jeff, and XYX. So 2 of the Reddit troopers have to fight each other. And of course, they are tied with an Elite Gaming person in that same group. Only 2 can advance.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about Fly Society, who is, of course, the highest seed in that group.
Yeah. Fly Society, and Fly Society was kind of, I feel like his win came out of nowhere. You know, he's always been a great player, and he's always been really great. But I think for the same reasons that Woody has a hard time to a lesser degree, because he's playing Siege and players are so appraised to kind of this very characteristic deck, they know how to play very defensively around it and know how to handle it, and Fly Society has been having a hard time. But then he swapped, I believe, that tournament to Royal Giant.
Yep.
And then he took the win.
Still a very good Siege player. Like, actually, we have listed him, Fly Society, in our little player cards, like the ones up here, as like a Rocket, Royal Giant, Mortar, Siege. Like, he's a Siege player. I mean, actually, I would say Fly Society at the 4 seed and Woody at the 1 seed are the 2 primary Siege players in the entire tournament series, and both of them are top 4 seeds, right? So Siege is clearly a good archetype in this. Let's see. Let's go over the rules one more.